Welcome to the latest episode of the Epoch, Escapist Magazine's vintage gaming talk show, where we bring on developers and critics and all sorts of wonderful people to talk about very, very significant games of the past, having significant moments. My name is Anthony John Agnello. I'm managing editor at Escapist Magazine. And today, joining me is Patrice Desilets of Panache Digital. Patrice, how are you?
Good.
Patrice, do you prefer Pat or Patrice? I mean, you and I are just meeting for the first time right now. I want to make sure I'm calling you by the right name.
Well, my mom calls me Patrice, but the rest of the world is calling me Pat. It's okay.
All right. We'll go with Pat. We'll go with Pat.
Okay.
So the reason I wanted Pat on the show today is that on October 28th, we're not hitting the exact day, but on October 28th, 2003, a wonderful game came out for the Nintendo GameCube, PlayStation 2, and the original Xbox called Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. And Pat was the creative director on that game. It rebooted the Prince of Persia franchise. It was pretty much considered the first successful 3D game in that series. But more than anything, it sort of helped redefine what 3D action games could be. There were some really, really good brawlers that were 3D at that point. There were a few good 3D platformers, but there was nothing that felt really smooth. There was nothing that felt like a real human body doing wildly acrobatic things in a three-dimensional space in the same way that the original Prince of Persia captured way back in the day. Z-Match in the chat. Pat needs headphones, my dude. This is not good. I think we're getting a little bit of feedback there, Pat. Anybody else? If it continues to be a problem, please speak up. Regardless, Pat, this was an enormous game for you. It wasn't your first game. It wasn't even your first game with Ubisoft. But it was, I would go as far as to say this is the game that puts you on the map. Tell me about how the Prince of Persia Sands of Time game came to be and how you came to work on it.
Yes. So no, it wasn't my first game. I think it was my third one, and but it's my first success. And it's funny because I'm a game designer who started in 3D. Right, I never had my 2D moment, or years. So it was the first time that we actually nailed down how a character can move in a 3D environment and how the camera is linked to the character, and that was a big achievement on our side. And it's funny because really we were just a bunch of kids together, didn't turn 30 yet, and so and now it shows my age. It's been 15 years, so I'll be 45 pretty soon, and we nailed it down basically. And it's funny because I wasn't a fan of the first Prince of Persia. It was a great achievement back in the days, but I felt it was a bit clunky. Back when we started in 2001, when I played for the very first time. The old Prince of Persia, even though it was good looking, it was kind of like old game design. So I played for an hour, not much more than that, and then said, okay, what's really the essence of what the Prince of Persia is, and how can we make it work in 2001? And so the essence was like this one palace in which you can play, and each room is a puzzle for you to unfold through the movement of the main character. And you die a lot,
Yes.
Right? And so that's exactly what we started to build. And then we said, well, this time, instead of just having, since we're going to be in 3D, why can't we use the walls also as a platform element? And it's funny because I say the word platform, it was forbidden on the team to use that word because we were not making a platform game. It was really not good for marketing reasons. But we were making a platform game, so let's use the walls also, and let's tell a nice story. Let's go back to the 1001 Nights feeling of it. Let's have someone tell a story to somebody else. which is the reason why there's the prince telling Farah the story. And that's why I said, it didn't happen that way when you die. But we were dying a lot at the beginning. And one morning I had this flash when I woke up about having a rewind. And that changed history of video games, I guess.
Yeah, you did away with death. What a novel idea.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, respawning is not something fun. Something you have to go through, but it's not fundamentally a pleasure. And and I wanted something that was really easy to understand. And I said, well, we have this function on all our remotes about rewinding. Why don't we just rewind? And I came up with this idea one morning, and one guy on the team said, you know what, I think I can code that. So we had a rewind on the PS2. You have to know that the PS2 has 32 megs of RAM. 2 of those 32 megs were used by the OS, and so it left us 30 megs to do everything else, and the rewind took 5 megs of the 32 megs of RAM.
Wow.
Yeah. And so everything is rendered roughly with 25 megs.
Man, that's the fact that everything in Sands of Time still. This is the first time I'm playing the game in years and years and years, and it feels so smooth. It feels so good.
Thank you.
How did you sort of work around those memory limitations to make something on what is now very primitive hardware feel so good, and also like to work as a cross-platform game? I know Ubisoft has always been, a sort of platform agnostic developer, but it was very unusual to see a game like Sands of Time coming out in 2003 that worked so well across 3 different platforms.
But how we did it with hard work, long hours. Honestly, like I said, we were all young, so no kids at home, and our life was making games, I guess. And then we had multiple teams already. We had smaller teams building up the other version, so the GameCube and Xbox. We were working on the PS2, the main team. We're 35-ish people, plus multiple teams around, and then it was at the same time. It's a pretty linear game, right? So we knew what we were doing. At the end of, I remember, I would finish Sands of Time and without cheats and without bugs. I would finish it around an hour and a half from the beginning till the end, and also at the end we cut 1/3 of the game that we've designed, and some of the things we left off became Warrior Within.
Wow.
The Griffin, for example, is not a boss in Sands of Time, but it is the boss of Warrior Within that we wanted in Sands of Time. There was the Forge also level that we cut, if I remember correctly. But how we did it is just like a really talented team, basically. So some of the people I still work with was on the team. So the lead animator, Alex Drouin, who really, he understood really quickly that a character is not about animation per se. It's more about transition between poses. And so we worked hard on the transitions.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you mean by transition? You mean...
Transition is like we have the let's say, the run cycle and the jump. The most important thing is that this 4 or 5 frames in between the 2 animations. And this is where we worked a lot to make sure that between all the behaviors, all the transition animation were well done, and so you can go from one to the other seamlessly. So that's one of the reasons. And we were somehow really straightforward. Like we were focused, I would say, to make that character. The character had to be the most important thing in the game. So we worked hard on the 3 C's. This is how we call it: character, camera, and control. And that was the core of Sands of Time. And most of the things we've done in that game is now totally normal in this day and age of third-person games, but for us, it was an experiment. It's funny that Sands of Time for us is an experiment.
Yeah, it's so well. This you literally just hit the nail on the head of why I wanted you to come onto the show at all, because as far as I can see from the outside, working as a critic, and I've been covering the video game industry for 10 years now. Like, I've only started really working in 2008, and even by 2008, the principles of movement, the principles of animation, the way you navigate space in Sands of Time had become completely standardized. Within a few years of this game coming out, every game character in a third-person action game moved like this. And I'm really curious, how do you think, as somebody who's working as a designer still, do you find yourself thinking, like, oh, we perfected it, we nailed how a character is supposed to move in 3D space? Or do you feel like you need to keep experimenting in the same way that you were experimenting when you worked on this game?
I still experiment. I'm telling you right now with the game I'm making. I'm still like, it depends on your subject matter. This is why I've done some talks, and I used to start my talks by saying, I don't know how to make a video game. Because each time you start a new project, a new subject matter, you need to, the subject matter will ask you some question that you need to answer. And right now we're working in a really organic environment. Not really, only organic environment. How do you interact with an organic environment in a 3D space? And so you ask yourself the question, how do I actually play with the tree? How does it work? How can I actually have fun with it? How can I do my transition well, and how do you do landings and whatnot? And then it's like, then we experiment. We change some control schemes here and there, and the control scheme, for example, of Sands of Time was really nailed down like 3 months before we shipped. Because I wasn't sure on which button things should happen. And this is where I had another kind of like flash about, we could, the control scheme should be based on what the player is actually doing, or what the player should be doing should reflect what the character is doing at the same time. So this is why all the long action done by the character is a press and hold, and regardless of the action button. So it's not like you have an action button. You have a button for press and hold, and you have the rest for tap. So this is why it's on the right bumper, if I remember correctly, to run on walls, and it's the button to drink water, because those two actions are sustained action. And even though it doesn't make sense that drinking water and running on walls should be on the same button, it is because we're asking the player to do a long action just like the character is doing.
Yeah, and it creates a really strong psychological link between anything that you have to do that is a sustained motion, that is like either physically enriching or physically exhausting. Those two things being mapped to the same button, it's very seamless. Like, I haven't, again, like, this is the first time I'm playing the game in years and years and years, but I'm not having a problem playing it other than getting down to timing. The controls are still very intuitive.
Yeah, it's something that for me it's really important that at the end of the day, I want the player to be that character. And that he never gets out of his experience and never comes back to his living room or his office. That he's the character. He's the actor playing that character. So even how you press the button should be a reflection of what's going on the screen. But this is all like seems so for me now obvious, but it was something I learned while making the game. Because I never thought I would be making video games in the first place. And so when I started my career in 97, I was told, take this little Playmobil character and design a game. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to, but I'll try. And I came up with, my reflexes of a student in movie study and literature, and how do I actually do it. And I realized that this craft, this medium, is about sensation more than emotion, and it's more about movement than psychological things going on in the brain of the character. And Sands of Time is really the moment where I understood a bit what would be a game designer for a third-person game should be. This is the moment where I got my signature and I knew what I wanted to do, and that we transposed afterwards in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. Pat, what did you want to do before you came to Ubisoft? I love that you brought up Hype, the Playmobil game that you shipped before Sands of Time, which I actually played. I found Hype very delightful. But what did you want to do before you fell into this? You know, you're a young guy, you're in your 20s, you're handed a toy license it's the smart kid toy license. Playmobil is like what you have when you can't get Star Wars action figures.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how does that interrupt your ambitions as an artist, as a professional? You know, where were you headed before this?
I think I wanted to be somebody creative, roughly. I studied in movies. I wish I can write. If I can write scripts, I was writing scripts with friends. I was also doing a lot of improv theater back in the day, some theater also. But in movies, I tried to be in the movie industry here in Montreal. But if you start by being the fourth electricians on a TV ad, this is or the editing room, best boy or whatever. You're not like really making any decision, and eventually Ubisoft arrived, and I just sent my resume, but I feel like I was in this I would say flow of being with creative people around me, some musicians, some actors, and that was my group of friends. And the game industry, the video game business, and art picked me up. And I said in one interview here in Montreal one day that I felt like I was a bit the straight guy in my group of friends who were a lot more wilder than me. And when I arrived in the game industry, I was the wild guy suddenly. and so my creativity could shine a lot more in games. And now I would never go and do something else. I feel like these days I would feel like the imposter syndrome if I would be making a game, a movie, or a TV show, or even writing a novel. I'm a game maker and I love it, and I think games. That's all I think about.
That's really interesting that you've become so sort of ensconced in the medium that you can't imagine doing anything else. And it's also interesting to me that you were talking about how when you were working on Prince of Persia Sands of Time, you thought that there were things that were so entrenched in the way people thought about making a game that just weren't fun. Like the idea of your character dying and you have to go backwards, because of that. Like if you fail in some way, your character has to die, you have to stop. How do your love of games now, how does that relate to your love of games when you first started? Do you think about games in a different way, 15 years on from Sands of Time than you did when you were making it?
I'm not sure I understand the exact question. Do I say it again?
Yeah, what I mean is, I realize that's a sort of an esoteric way to think about it. What I mean is, when you were making Sands of Time, you were very much trying to get outside of what you thought a video game should be, even though you'd never made one. And now, I'm wondering if, your love of being a game maker now, do you think what makes a game good, what you want a video game to be while you're making it, is different today than it was in 2003?
Not really. It's always the same. Like I said, I want people to be elsewhere,
Mm.
and be. It's important. This idea of like, I'm not in Kansas anymore,
Yeah.
and I'll be that character in the proposition of the game, and I'll do my best to live it. And I guess this is my background as an actor, right? Of like, you have to be that character, otherwise people won't believe in it. And so I'm still juggling with those ideas, and that's why my games are a bit different than the rest. I would be a really bad just game director for like, I cannot do a game for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just do like a Me Too game. I would be a shitty creative director, because I don't know. I do my thing, and my thing is like, I take you and put you in the situation. And Sands of Time is really, like I said, it's, for me, it's the foundation of everything else. I became that guy also who does historical, or even if like Sands of Time is not historical, for most people it happened in the past.
Yes.
And so historical, and so it's part of my signature also, old palaces and whatnot, and so now everything that I thought of back in 2001, 2002, and 3 is still there in me, and I'm still trying to refine the way I think about game makings, and the medium. I love the medium. The medium is so powerful, so powerful. Like I used to say also, some companies are willing to spend millions of dollars for a 30-second ad during the Super Bowl, because they think 30 seconds will change the synapses of the people receiving their ads. People are spending hours with what we do. So we change people's synapses, and it's normal. And so let's do something great with it, and be creative with it.
Yeah.
So I don't say it changed it. It's just like, oh, okay, I know how to make a little bit this type of video games. Let's continue, and let's push the boundaries. And some of the stuff we didn't do in Sands of Time, we did in Assassin's Creed. The crowd, for example, is something I wanted to do in Sands of Time, couldn't do it. The jump from rooftop to rooftop, and more climbing I wanted to do in Sands of Time, we did it in Assassin's Creed. And so it's like, I guess like, I don't know who said that, but some novelists, like, I'm always writing the same novel. Well, I'm making the same game, and then you tweak, you're having fun with it. But I would never do I don't think I could do a real-time strategy game. I don't think I would be that guy. I don't think my game would be great.
Pat, that is insane that you bring up that quote, because I was actually going to bring that up in a second. The idea, and now I can't remember who did it either, but the idea that there are two types of artists. There are the artists like Bowie, who are constantly trying to reinvent themselves, constantly trying to do something new and find this new form of expression. And then there's the artist who just keeps making the same thing over and over and over again, refining it and tweaking it and trying to find something new. And I do see that in your work. I think of, like, there are the Patrice Desilets games, and a game that you worked on, as soon as you pick it up, they feel very focused. This is, not to denigrate any of the work that's been done on the Assassin's Creed series since you left it, but the last time I actually liked an Assassin's Creed game was Assassin's Creed 2. And the reason is that it felt very focused. Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 both feel, like I am transported, like I am that person, like I am inhabiting that place. Altair, I don't think Altair is gonna, like, go home and sit on the couch and, do his taxes like you were talking about. He's doing his thing, and I'm there with him. I am curious. You were talking about how like you bring up your background as an actor as something that fuels your games, and I always love the idea that actors need to call on something honest in themselves, like
I'm
that
losing
nobody's
you. I
gonna.
cannot hear your question. I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. What I was getting at was an actor. You talked about your background in acting, and actors need to really be successful.
Yeah.
Call on something that's honest. They need to find the real emotion in their own experience. So I'm curious, what do you think is most important to capture about yourself in your games? You were talking about transitions being more important than animation. What in the transitions of your characters in your game world, the way things are rendered, are a reflection of your personality?
What's the reflection of my personality in the game I'm making? Was something
Yeah.
I realized
Yeah.
2 years ago when people came to see my new one,
Yeah.
Ancestors, is that I'm a guy who suffered vertigo in life, but big time. And so I guess not in my game. Like I love to play with verticality a lot.
Interesting.
And so I guess that's the reflection of who I am. Sands of Time is the one that is like outside of like I'm not the prince.
Yeah.
I'm a bit Altair and Ezio. I would say the assassins, the motto. I live by it. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. And that's my Trojan horse, by the way. That game, because people tend to forget that it's called Assassin's Creed, and the creed is as important as assassins. And the creed is like, dude, like you can be what you want. And so this is me talking to the people. I remember when I finished Sands of Time, I turned 30 the year like in 2004, and I asked myself right at the beginning, will I be continuing making games? Like I'm 30. Is it really serious? Should I be making video games? I was supposed to, to make movies and write novels and whatnot, and then suddenly I'm a video game maker. Really? And so I was asking myself a lot of questions about that. And I don't want to sound a big head, but I was like, yes, you have to continue because you have a mic now. You have like people are listening to you. You should do something with it. And I heard a song, Leonard Cohen song. First we take Manhattan, and then we take Berlin. And inside of that song, it said you have to change the system within it. And I was like, oh yeah, let's do something. And I came up with Assassin's Creed. This idea of and I would use the fact that playing an assassin is so much, the fantasy of playing an assassin is so much easier to understand than to play a prince. Because at first, playing a prince is not, you don't see an action, you don't see yourself doing anything special. And I know, being Canadian, I know about princes and princesses and queens and whatnot. And so I know a prince can wait a long time before he can do actually something. Because Prince Charles is still waiting for mommy to die to take the place. And so then he goes and that's all he does in some parade. And anyway, so I said, it should be nice to change. And I would do something more historical and something that people can relate and something more real. And let's continue with this career. Now I'm okay with the fact that I'm a video game maker and in his 40s. But yeah, it's all me. It's all about, first you have to know I'm a gamer. I do game a lot, and I see the matrix in all the games that I play in third person. I understand how it's made, and I feel like these days we're more in the moment of let's make it as good as possible, but we don't push the boundaries that much in the way we interact with the 3D world. I feel but then in general, games are really well done.
Yeah.
really well crafted. But this is kind of like the reason why we play those games. Like they're well made, but it's not. Oh, this is something new I've never played before.
So we got a couple of questions in the chat that I want to address before we go any further. Magus824 and Cubertoy, we are not playing this on a CRT, but this is in fact the GameCube version of the game, playing on original hardware, and we're pumping this through a FrameMeister video capture. So the 240p signal actually looks nice and clean. I wanted this to look authentic to 2003. We also have a question here from Jaded Cynic. Were there any lessons that you learned from Donald Duck going quackers that directly led to any of the choices you made on Prince of Persia?
Good question. Yes, they are. It's the rhythm. I learned, like, I was an okay game, but there was no flow and no rhythm in it. Because, like, we were still like, oh, how do we do a third-person camera? How do we do a third-person character? We used a lot of how Lara Croft was moving back in the days. If I remember correctly, like, you had to take 3 steps back before you could actually jump in the Tomb Raider. And so it was... In Donald Duck, it's all about the rhythm. And you can jump... on the head of multiple enemies, and I learned about rhythm and then I transposed into Sands of Time. When there's some gameplay, columns to columns, there's like a lot of rhythm in it, and this is what I've learned from Donald Duck to Sands of Time.
Magus824. Patrice, what is your favorite game at the moment? Something that makes you go, wow.
Oh, the question. I gotta be careful. Right now, I finished Spider-Man, which is a big thing, I guess, because I don't finish games often. So I finished Spider-Man. I loved it. Even though I felt like they're like I'm going on a mission and the phone rings and there's something going on the street and I'm asked to do something else. There was a lot of like, let me just be Spider-Man for 2 seconds, but I finished it. So and it was a really well-crafted game again. I'm playing a little bit of Red Dead as we speak, but then I play a lot of Civilization 6, maybe too much, because I know I will never make a Civilization game, so I don't work. Because when I play Spider-Man or Red Dead, I work a little bit. I try to understand how to make it. And like again, I see the Matrix, so it's a bit different. It's a different experience for me. And then I'll be totally honest, the game that I play the most is the one I'm making. Not because I work, it's because it's so unique that it's the only place I can have that experience. It's in the game I'm making, so it's like it's fun.
Pat, what can you tell me about Ancestors? I'm incredibly curious about this game. I know very little about it, and I feel like most people know very little about it. I know that you sort of play in the natural world, and there's a lot of focus on organic environments, forests, jungles, and playing as animals. But I'm not sure what it is.
Well, it's totally normal. We talked about it a few years back, and then we went silent for a while, just trying to make that thing. So it's a third-person action adventure survival game set in an open world in Africa 10 million years ago. And so you're basically the last common ancestors from all the big apes. And you move through time and you evolve into something different. So from 10 million years to roughly 2 million years ago. And you try to evolve as Lucy, basically.
Cool. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's a great premise.
It is the premise, and then it's a Patrice Desilets game. So it's all about how do you interact with trees, how do you interact with predators, how do you actually survive. And I'm asking the question because the games I make, sometimes I try to ask a question to the players, and the player has to answer my question. And this time is like, hey, Homo sapiens, do you think you can survive like your ancestors did? And so it's like, and you know, it's funny because going back to what we said earlier, like, yes, I never thought I would be making games or be a video game designer. So there's stuff in games that I don't like, that I don't enjoy. So yes, it's that. I don't enjoy UI and HUD. I don't enjoy menus. And so I try to avoid this. So right now we're doing a bit like a survival game without any menus.
Thank God. Because the thing that makes me stop playing survival games is the inevitable, like, deluge of inventory, and you need to expand your inventory. You need to drop things out of your inventory. So,
yeah, so
man.
We're trying something new on this.
Cool.
Yeah, and so you're playing that third-person character, but it's not about the character per se this time, which is really important. It's about your clan. So it's more than one character that you have to manage. What else can I say without spoiling anything? And yes, one important thing is that I'm also known as a game designer where the narrative is really important, right? It's Farah's story, the Prince story, and then the Assassin's Creed saga. So narrative is really important. And this time, I won't be telling you a lot of stories. I want you to write your own stories with ancestors. It's your evolution. It's not mine. So everything is there in the game world, and it's for you to be curious with it and to be creative with it, and you'll live your own adventures and stories. I feel like for people who are streaming or Twitch, every time you take the pad and you start a new game, or even if you continue on, you'll have a different experience. And it's true. Like that's why I come back often to my game, because each time I play it, it's not about going through the path. It's not about going through the walkthrough. It's about what I'm going to do tonight. And that's what it's like. It's sometimes you get into one specific area at 1 o'clock in the morning when it's raining and the fog is on, and it's like, I'm the only one who's been there, and it's good. And it's been done by my team here at Panache, 30 people, and I feel like some big teams will go, how did they do it with 30? It's like it's a massive game. So at first we thought about being episodic. We're not anymore. It's a real, actual game. But we're making it in volume, so there'll be more than one at the end of the day. And volume 1, called Before Us, takes from 10 million years to 2 million years ago. And you evolve, and there's RPG elements and whatnot.
Man, I want to see this game right now. This sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it won't happen. You can see the logo on my t-shirt. That's all.
I'm really interested that you want it to be an open world game, that that Ancestors is planned as an open world survival game. I feel like even more than Grand Theft Auto 3, that the first Assassin's Creed sort of created the model for open world games that is still sort of dominating, big budget development these days. And I feel like sometimes that the modern incarnation of that is just like, we'll put more stuff in it, put more stuff in it, put more stuff in it. And I'm curious, what interests you about making an open world game now? What does an open world offer you now that it didn't in 2007?
Once you open up the Pandora's box as a game designer of open world, it's tough to go back to linear. It's like it lacks freedom, and so and it's totally a different way of thinking. Sometimes it's easier to say, okay, you'll go from A to B to C to D, but it's not as fun, and it's really a shallow experience. So you need big systems on the side to make it more open. But right now, it's like it was basically the nature of the subject matter. You cannot have a game about human evolution in Africa in a linear game, I feel.
Yeah.
Because it's about, whoa, imagine, like, I don't know what the hell I am in Africa.
Yeah.
This is what our ancestors, like, used to be and live. They didn't know. They didn't know a lot. They were apes, which we still are, by the way. But, and so to make ancestors, we needed open world theme. But I feel like I'm sorry, by the way, if now all the games are like you have to go up a tower to reveal the minimap or something like that.
Well, I think people are finally learning their lesson there. I think the many towers that you inflicted on the land, Patrice, are finally starting to crumble.
Plus, I'm sorry about the flags, which I'm not. I'm not a collector in my life. I don't care about collecting stuff. But I know for people it's really important, and so we put flags at the end of production, just so people can collect them all.
You're a monster. You're a friggin' monster.
I know. And then I did it again. I did it again with the feathers. But this time there was a purpose, a narrative purpose about the feathers. I wanted you to, as players, I wanted you to feel the emotion of loss, sorry. And so we came up with this little thing at the beginning where your brother, Petruccio, is telling you to go collect those feathers. And then Ezio's asking, why? Why should I collect those feathers, right? And Petruccio says, I'll tell you later. And then he dies. He gets caught in this fodder thing, and then he dies. And you never know why. So then suddenly there's this emotion through a sensation and whatnot of like, I will never know. And I won't tell you why, because Petruccio died before he could tell me also. So nobody will ever know why Ezio had to collect those feathers.
Oh.
And that's the emotion of loss right there.
I love that. I like that intentional mystery. That's a sort of cruelty to the player that is intentional, and I can get behind that.
Yeah.
I'm always curious about sort of the things that you put in a game that might not outwardly seem fun, but that will ultimately be powerful in that way. You know, saying, here are all these feathers, but I'm never going to tell you what the true meaning of them is.
Well, the same thing in Sands of Time, there is this moment where you go down a ladder for like, I guess it was like roughly 2 minutes. Not the ladder, but a staircase before the love scenes. And that also is like, why is it so long? Is because it's not real. Like it's like they're going through their minds, yeah. And you go down and down and down, and it's long and it's long, and it's like, because I feel like games are not just about fun.
Yeah.
There is games for that. The games I'm making is just not fun.
Yeah.
There's more emotion, more sensation to give than the pure pleasure of fun. There's something else sometimes. And for example, in Sands of Time also, this is where I understood the power of the contemplation pleasure of like, that is just good looking. I'm happy to have that on my screen right now. And it's like this nice shot here. It's like, and this is through Sands of Time that I've learned that there is a fun, a pleasure to just be in a beautiful environment.
Yeah, the thing that I've always said when I want to sort of sell somebody who doesn't play video games on the idea of why video games are wonderful is that making something move and behave that isn't real is inherently pleasurable. Like, there is an inherent thrill in making something imaginary move around on a screen. When you're making Ancestors, I'm really interested how the transition has been to working with characters that aren't human. Since you're sort of looking at evolution and how mankind emerged, I would imagine you're dealing with a different sort of emotion, the idea of primitive emotion. But I'm curious about how your sort of approach to giving people that pleasure that isn't necessarily fun is different in Ancestors.
Oh, that's tough right now because I'm making it.
Right.
It's easy to talk about the past and for sure, it's the character per se. It's like, let's be honest and not kid ourselves. It like at first, you're really a monkey. So the movement is a lot different than any other game. You don't have to be just badass. You're something else. So it's like it's even more fluid than anything I've done before somehow. And because of the nature of the character, you not say I would cut corners, but you can fake a little bit more easier some of the movement than my past games. But yes, and it's about again. I don't want to spoil anything. So, and that's my main issue about Ancestors and how I'm going to talk about it. By the way, is because as soon as I say too much, I'm not spoiling the story because that's not an issue. But I'm removing the real actual fun of it. Is like it's the discovery.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to talk too much about it per se. But yes, it's about. The I am the one. The Archland is the one, and I don't know what's around. Like what's on top of that hill? What's on the other side? And it's not about going from mission giver to mission giver. So it's like you're really you'll be a bit lost in Africa. So I guess this is the emotion like this time that I want to play with is like this sense of like, I don't know where I am. I don't know, because I wanted people to go back to the core of what we are, because we're mutants.
Yeah.
We know so much now. Like you have to know our ancestors didn't know what the sun was. They didn't know that if that thing would come back the next day. Never.
Yeah. I always love thinking about like what an eclipse looked like to somebody who didn't understand what the sun was. It's no wonder we thought that the world was freaking ending every single time.
Exactly. And so it's all those emotions, but also the nature of the clan is important. So your clan and being together, even though it's a single player game, the feeling that, oh, I'm not alone in this and we can help each other out. The sense of, like I said, of discovery, the sense of it also of the routine of a day. But roughly also, it's really this like, what's on the other side of the hill? And so curiosity is something that is really important to have fun with Ancestors.
That,
you have to be
that feeling of discovery and getting lost is one of my favorite things in video games. I have a very contentious relationship with Zelda Breath of the Wild, because I love that world and I love that space, and just getting lost there is so meaningful to me. But I feel like there are so many things in that world that ultimately are frustrating. Just having to manage your items and weapon degradation and all of these things creating unpleasant friction. I'm curious about, and you don't even have to speak specifically about Ancestors, but how do you personally sort of guard yourself against, trying to create something that you really think is going to work, but then realizing it's not fun and making the hard decision to either change or cut it? When you're making a game, how do you make sure you're recognizing what isn't working?
That's my job. This is the part of it. It's just a job. Yeah. So you try and then say, you know what, it won't work, and you just cut it and you move forward. And then sometimes it's like, you know what, it's not perfect. but we'll live with it. It's like what I call the boo factor. It's like some portion of a game is like boo, but it's there. It's okay. It works. There's a purpose for it, and it'll be okay. And then it's like it's about am I true to the essence of the subject matter?
Yeah.
It's always been that. So Sands of Time, am I true about being a Prince of Persia game in general? Yes, cool. Is it 1001 Nights? Yes, cool. Is the fight like fun and enough and difficult enough? Yes, cool. And then, like I said, you didn't know that 1/3 of the game was cut.
Yeah.
So who cares? No, but when I was there, I was like, no. It's like it's a matter of life and death, and then no, it's not. It's okay. Like people don't know what's left on the editing room floor.
I mean, that really seems true. Like it seems like not taking yourself too seriously is essential.
Yes, but again, and then like it depends on the day because there is stuff also saying no, this is important. Like we were going through the last couple of weeks of like making sure our scope was good, and there was stuff that's okay. This like we'll wait for later or we'll never make it. It's not the end of the world. But there's this thing here we haven't started, but let's do it because this I feel is really really important. It is one of the features. It's underused. We need to finish it, and like it's okay. This one will take the time to manage and do it well. And so it's like you're juggling as a creative director. You juggle between what the team can actually do, what the technology lets you do. Like again, the rewind. I think the maximum is 8 seconds, but that's like my 5 megs of RAM at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like even if like I wanted 20 seconds of rewind, it's like no dude, it won't happen. And yes, it's not about like we talked about big ideas and the medium and whatnot, but we're making video games at the end of the day.
Yes.
So chill out. You're not a surgeon. Nobody's gonna die. It's okay. You're giving like pleasure to people. You're lucky. I'm one of the luckiest bastards on this planet. I enjoy what I do. I got good people around me. I come up at work at 10. You know, it's like I'm lucky. So let's have fun.
I don't have to get out of bed at 10. Now that is the job perk. I always try to say that to anyone when they start taking anything in video games too seriously, whether that's on the press side or the development side. I always say, nobody is forcing us to be here. We're not in the salt mines. Nobody is doing this because it's like the family business, and you had to take up the mantle of playing Super Mario Brothers for a living.
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. Patrice, it's been such an incredible delight talking to you today. One last question, which is, when Ancestors is finally done, and it's perfect, and it's out of your system, and you've told this amazing story about human evolution, do you see yourself ever going back to make a linear game like Sands of Time again? Do you ever get nostalgic for this kind of format?
Maybe just because, maybe I'll do like an hour game eventually. Just a really short burst of something.
Yeah.
But I have other games that are big too that I want to make. And so it won't be my next one, but eventually, yes, I think I'll do a really, really short game. I want to test that eventually. But the Ancestors needs to work really well so I can have the money to do what the fuck I want.
Yeah. Now I can't imagine a better note to bring this show home on. You always want to be able to be successful enough to do whatever the fuck you want. That is it to a T. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to thank Pat again and everybody at Panache and Marianne for helping set this up. We will be back next Tuesday with our new game show where we're talking to developers of things that are just coming out. We're playing an awesome Switch game called Moonlighter with some wonderful, wonderful devs from Spain. And next week's episode of the Epoch, it's the 20th anniversary of Ocarina of Time, everybody. We're really, really old. So we're going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and hanging out with the developer of a wonderful little mobile game called Witch Eye, who goes by the name Moon Kid. Pat, where can people follow what Panache is doing so that when you're finally able to tell the world more about what Ancestors is, they can be there at the ground level?
They can follow me on Twitter, Patrice Pat Des, and then it's like Ancestors the game.
Ancestors the game. There's also
and Panache Digital Games. You can follow us there.
Yeah, you can sign up on the newsletter, or you can follow us on Panache Digital Games, Facebook, Twitter. And you'll get news.
Everything. Follow all of those places, everyone. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at @AJohnAgnello, and I encourage you to follow Escapist Magazine at escapistmagazine.com. We're publishing all sorts of wonderful things. If you're interested in how cars are affecting climate change and how automation is going to make driving vanish, and you also love Forza Horizon 4, please go read my essay about all of those things on the site right now. All right, everybody. We'll be back next week. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you.